Well, everybody, welcome. I think there may be a few other people that are going to be joining us soon, I hope. This meeting represents the first meeting of our second year as a committee, and I want to thank everybody for their continuing participation on this important committee, and wish to thank both Whitney and Josh, since they're both on this meeting with us, for their assistance in making this committee work as well as it does. So thank you both for that. So as we begin our second year, there are a couple of changes that you may notice, a few new faces on the screen. But first, I want to thank Murat, who has been elevated in the DASH system to a member of the board of directors. And I wish to thank him for his service on the DAC in the first year, which was a most interesting year as we got underway, and he was extremely helpful in getting us organized and having volunteered to be vice chair, I now lose my vice chair. But I thank you, Murat, and I don't know whether you want to say anything, because I know it's late where you are, before we let you go and get some sleep.
Thank you very much, Russ. Not too much. I am traveling. I'm overseas, so it's a little bit late here. And Josh, I wanted to tell you, like, I'm in the same chair that you were a couple of weeks ago. I just tested positive. You know, I kind of avoided it for 2.5 years, but this week was not a lucky week for me. But it was great to actually get to know everyone as much as I could. And I think that during the selection process and in the first board meeting that I attended, there was a lot of mention about this group that we are, you know, gathering today. And I think one takeaway that I can share with the group for the good of the group is that, you know, I think it needs more exposure so that people can actually see and understand the role and the responsibilities of this group. And I think there's a you know, tremendous effort that's going to come out of this. And I do understand this is an inaugural you know, group, right? The advisory committee. But I think there's going to be a very interesting path forward once people start realizing the responsibility that is actually vested in this group. So I wanted to share that. And I'm parting, but I'm not really going anywhere. So you know, if there's anything that you guys need to know from me, or if you want me to advocate anything on your behalf in the board of directors meetings and everything, I'll be happy to do that.
Thank you very much, Murat. We really appreciated your participation and those kind words. And if you wish to depart now, we completely understand. You get some sleep and to feel better.
I'll hang out for a while, and
okay.
Then maybe, yeah, when the medicine that I'm drinking kicks in, that usually knocks me
All
out.
right.
So
sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let me introduce 3 new members to our board, and I have Josh and Whitney to thank for helping us recruit these new members. We had a couple of departures due to personal issues over the last 6 months. So I'm glad to see that our group is now strengthened by these additions. So first, let me introduce, although he's not on camera, but he's on the phone, Abdel Rahman Al Nubi. So Abdel, welcome. Oh, there he is.
Thank you.
Do you want to say maybe 2 or 3 minutes of a quick bio about you and your interest? Which he may not be able to do as he's traveling here. So let me move. I'll come back to you, Abdel. Let me next introduce Matthew Mcmanus. Matt, do you want to?
Thank you, Ross. Real great to be here. I started this year as a transportation commissioner, and I have a real interest as well in electric vehicles. I've been a energy economist here in Washington, D.C. for 30 years. I've lived in Alexandria for 30 years, 18 in Delray and 12 in West Alexandria. So I'm very excited about the implementation of electric vehicles and honestly learning about some of the pluses and minuses of how you do it properly. And it looks like Alexandria is really a trendsetter. So really an honor to be associated with this. I've rode my bike to work. I've taken a single occupancy vehicle. I've taken metro and dash bus. So use all forms of transit in Alexandria.
Thank you so much, Matt. And our last new member is Jim Milanska. And Jim, you might want to just spend a couple of minutes talking about your role.
Hi, Ross. My name's Jim Meslanka. I've been very much involved with the city for many years. Actually, I retired from the city about a year and a half ago. But before then, I worked for the city and actually in TNES. So I was actually one of the transit planners at TNES. So I know the ins and outs of transit very well, including Dash, and I've had an entire career of transit back from my old hometown of Detroit and other places in the interim. So I'm looking forward to providing some whatever additional information I can provide and helping out whenever I can do so. So I look forward to being part of this little group. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Jim. Abdel, can you, without even putting on your screen, do you want to say a few things about yourself, please?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right, perfect. Yeah, sorry about earlier. Call just dropped. Like I said, I'm on the road. But I would like to thank Josh for suggesting to me to join this group. I was a candidate for the board, for the dashboard, and I was not successful in joining the board. And then Josh suggested that maybe I want to try and see if I can contribute to Dash and to the city by being a member of this group. I've been a resident of Alexandria for over 11 years now. I work in the transit industry. I actually work for Metro. I've been there for about 10 years. So I work in transit. That's the day job. I also I've been elected to serve on school board District C of Alexandria. The school board involved in advocacy. I was active with Grassroots Alexandria with Jim here. Before that, I was also a PTA president for my daughter and my son's school on the West End, Samuel Tucker. So I've been around. I'm always looking for ways to contribute to the city and to make it a better place for everyone. And I thought, hopefully, by joining this group, I can just contribute to Dash. And I always view transit as an equalizer of opportunity. So hopefully I can contribute and make a little bit of a difference here. Thanks a lot for having me, and looking forward to serving with everyone here.
Thank you very much, Abdel. Whitney, do you want to do the roll call, please?
All right, here we go. Jim Durham,
Here,
Abdel.
the audio working?
Yes, I can hear you. Abdel, I know you're here. It's fine. Yvette Jong. Jason Kunick. James Maslanka.
Here,
Matthew Mcmanus.
Here,
Bonnie O'Day.
Here.
Sandy Sainer.
here,
Ross Simons.
Here.
Eric Van Horn.
Here.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Whitney. So as we go into this second year, we have a number of opportunities ahead of us that we didn't have last year. Conditions hopefully are improving health-wise for the entire world, let alone our little city of Alexandria. And it is my hope and intention that when we have our next meeting in the fall, that we will at least do it as a hybrid meeting. So those of you on this committee who wish to come and meet at the Dash headquarters, we will accommodate you there. And those who may or may not wish to come for a variety of reasons can still participate via Zoom or via audio. So I wanted to make that known. This is hopefully will be our last full Zoom meeting as a committee as we make our transition. So I wanted to begin tonight where we sort of left off the last time, which was, you recall we had an extensive presentation by Josh and his colleagues about the budget for Dash and the opportunity for additional funding for Dash. That was before the Alexandria City Council. We unfortunately didn't have a lot of discussion time at the end of that meeting. So we left it that I would attempt to draft a letter to circulate to the committee to articulate a consensus view of the committee for the proposed actions in front of City Council. What that produced was sort of an interesting feedback. There were a couple of individuals who felt uncomfortable about sending such a letter because it seemed to be at odds with the bylaws for this committee, and I'll go into that in a second. There were a number of members who were enthusiastic about sending a letter, and then there were a bunch of people who just never responded. So trying to stick to the guidelines as best as I can, I asked Josh for a ruling on the guidelines related to advocacy, and he opined that he thought it would be best under the circumstances that we let people as individuals on this committee who felt strongly about the issue send their own letters to City Council, but that we would not do it as an official DAC activity pending further clarification and discussion at this meeting. So this is why this is number one on our agenda for tonight. I just want to remind people that in the advisory committee guidelines, which I'm just holding up, all of you should have a copy of, there are several issues procedurally that one should follow. And I'll just briefly read them to you as kind of reminders, and then we can have a discussion about what we would like to do. So under section 2, which is the purpose of this committee, one of the first primary roles of this group is section 2A, which says assist staff in the execution of the organization's mission, programs, and services. So one could argue that the briefing that we had that night was in pursuit of section 2, subheading A, which we were informed about Dash's proposals to City Council. Then there is a section that says Dash provides advisory input to Dash staff, the DAC, sorry, excuse me, provides advisory input to Dash staff and leadership on key decisions, which again could be interpreted that our letter would have gone first to the Dash board and then perhaps the City Council, advocating for that purpose. Now, where it gets a little tricky is further on in the advisory committee guidelines. So under section 4 that deals with meetings, and this is where I heard a objection from a member. 4.2, which is the section that deals with committee actions, subheading D reads, advisory letters to Dash leadership must be endorsed by the committee by a modified consensus voting process. Under this process, the committee members must come to a consensus in order to take action on an issue. However, one member can vote against the action and the action would still be passed. If 2 committee members vote against the action does not pass. Members also have the ability to vote to abstain, which does not count against the consensus vote. However, in the instance that we faced following our last meeting, it was clear that I had one individual who was objecting and would have fit that term. But frankly, since I hadn't heard from a number of other board members, it wasn't clear whether those board members were actually objecting per se, or whether they were going to abstain. So again, technical point, but an important point to make as we proceed. And then 4.3, and again, this was the source of some objection, deals with special meetings. So again, I want you to remember that the City Council action that was going to occur on this budget was about 10 days, if I remember correctly, from the date of our last meeting before City Council was going to begin to vote on this action. So it required a degree of dexterity and flexibility on the part of this committee to take action if it chose to take action as a committee. So this particular part of our guidelines read, a special meeting of the advisory committee may be called by the chairperson or a simple majority of voting members with the concurrence of the staff committee liaison, that's being Whitney. Members shall be given 10 days written or verbal notice prior to said meeting. This notice must set forth the items to be considered and no other items shall be considered. So again, we were really outside the window for formal notification of a special meeting, which will allow us to have discussed at length and then in theory vote on such a letter. So I want to do a couple of things this evening with the group. One is I really want to get a sense of the group as to how you wish to deal with advocacy in general. And that advocacy is not only to, as it is written here, to Dash leadership, but is there a need to modify the guidelines in a way if we wish as a committee to advocate as a committee to an external body? For example, City Council, conceivably even the Transportation Commission, of which Matt sits on, or any other city or regional body. So that's point one for this discussion. And then point two is, if there is a sense amongst this group that advocacy is part of this effort, do we need to modify any of the regulations in the guidelines to allow for more flexibility, basically with timing, and maybe even with voting remotely or by mail or by email or some other form to allow actions to proceed? So I'm going to lay that out there first. I would like to ask Josh, since he was involved in the drafting of these regulations, these guidelines, I should say, excuse me, to opine briefly on this matter before we begin our discussion. So if I may, Josh, and thank you for joining us for this purpose this evening.
Yeah, of course, Ross. Thanks for having me and for carrying on this conversation. So while I have the floor, I'll say to Murat, I hope you feel better soon and that you're having mild symptoms. As a two-timer now on COVID, it's never a fun experience, although hopefully it's better now. So, Ross and I did have some conversation about this as we tried to navigate what was a pretty pressing, time-constrained matter, and certainly one that was significant in the context of the continuation of the implementation of the new Dash network and in accordance with the Alexandria Transit Vision Plan. I would echo what Ross has summarized, that and is accurate. It's kind of how things transpired at that point in time. I will say that to all of you, thank you for even considering the matter, for hearing us, for those of you who reached out to council members individually. The ultimate effect was that we did receive a supplemental for improving the Line 30, and that is a really important step forward. I would say that as it relates to this matter, to your point, Ross, I very much view this committee as one that should take a role in helping to form and refine its purpose over time. It is very much intended to be an advisory committee heavily towards staff. And I think the board does have an interest in hearing from this committee periodically, and Ross, that invite remains open if and when at a time you feel there's a matter or matters which you would like to present on or to meet with the board. But as it relates to these procedures and these guidelines, I think that there is opportunity here to better define them based on what matters you're discussing, what issues you find the organization is facing. And candidly, I will say that this is just the beginning of some very probably to be significant funding challenges facing Dash in the coming 3 to 5 years, because the cost of doing what we do continues to rise. We have a labor contract that will be renegotiated next year, which will inevitably bring additional costs, and rightfully so, but they can often be significant. We have expansion intentions resulting from the ATV, the new network. We have the pressures of being fare free and the eventual sunsetting of the TRIP funding. For those of you who are new to the committee, the Transit Ridership Incentive Program, TRIP funding that helps to support the fare free service. That is not a forever thing. That is only a 3-year funding source. So anyway, it's likely that there will need to be further talk and discussion and positions to be taken. So I think it is suitable for this committee to think about how and in what ways you would like to take advocacy positions as a group. And as you mentioned, Ross, I think there is always the right of every member of this group, and I would remind you all that you can speak as citizens of Alexandria to the board and to city council on any matters, and any matters related to Dash. And I welcome it and certainly appreciate those of you who have taken that time. But I do recognize that there is more to come from a consensus of a group as opposed to one individual. And I know that council views this group importantly, as does the board. Ultimately, this was something we've talked about for a number of years, and I think that that's reflected in the fact that several of you serve on the Duke Street group, and that is actually something that is written in to the Duke Street project, the requirement that there be representation from this group. So I think that the opportunity is there, and I don't know that it is going to be terribly difficult to make edits here. And to some degree, that was intentional when we set up the group. We wanted to make sure that it suited the need and represents the ridership. It is at its core intended to be a group that speaks on behalf of and helps to represent those who use the service in a way that is less constrained and is able to have candid conversations with the team, the staff of Dash, and certainly I would guess, if necessary, others. So I don't know, Ross, if that helps to kind of summarize. I know that our conversation was under a lot of various different time constraints and whatnot. So I think it's very good and appreciated of you to kind of navigate this, over the summer and into the early fall, so that the next time that there are things that groups are considering, whether it be the dashboard or city council, should this group want or need to take a position on, I certainly would like to see that something that you can navigate.
Thank you, Josh. I appreciate those comments very much. I want to open it up now to members of the committee, because I really would like to hear your opinions about this, both old and new members, even though you are probably only beginning to understand this issue. I think it's an important one. So please feel free to offer your comments.
This is Sandy. I have to apologize because I was one of the people that didn't respond back several months ago. Maybe it was confusion or laziness on my part. However, my comment is more to the procedural aspect of it, not knowing why the procedure calls for consensus with 2 out of the members basically can stop the whatever's before the board, or not before the board, but before the committee as an election. I would think, and I'm not too sure if you go to a voting, if it should be 51% or 60%, but it seems sort of lopsided on a consensus. One person, it doesn't take it out. 2 people, it takes it out. And if that seems to negate probably a good argument from other board members on a particular, I keep saying board, on committee members on a particular issue, that maybe if there was an issue that required a lot of discussion, which I think anything we vote on should have a discussion. I realize Zooming, getting enough people to talk about a particular issue and have I would call it for lack of a better term, a debate on it. Possibly when we go back to live meetings, that might take care of itself. So to summarize, I think from a procedural standpoint, it really should be a vote. And whether the votes, majority, simple majority, or 60% or some percentage in there, I think would be more in tune with what the committee feels a particular subject should be handled. That's about all I've got to say.
Okay, thank you, Sandy. That was very helpful. Others? Bonnie?
Thanks. I'll make 2 points. One is, I believe that the organization has a quorum requirement. If it doesn't, it should. And so for Zoom meetings or in-person meetings, I would suggest a majority of the persons present and voting could pass whatever issue we're voting on. Secondly, I do believe that we should have some ability to process things via email. And again, the majority of people who vote should be able to pass an issue. Excuse me, shut that off. Thanks.
Thank you, Bonnie. Just to clarify, there is a quorum rule in our guidelines. Yvette?
Thank you, Ross. Yeah, I would like to echo what Sandy just said. I personally think a simple majority will be sufficient to engage in an advocacy effort. I'm also in agreement of DAC members engaging in the advocacy activities as a committee. And one thing I would like to point out is that in the event that the motion to write a letter will pass and it's not unanimous, I don't know if we could discuss as a group if it makes sense for Ross to write a letter saying that on behalf of the DAC group, and then sign the signature being Dash Advisory Committee. Alternatively, we could say the undersigned are members of the DAC group, and then individuals will put their names at the bottom. So I would like to gauge the interest, see what everybody else thinks.
Thank you, Yvette. That's helpful. Jim?
I was just, one of the things I was thinking about is basically the DAC, at least in my estimation, is, or I guess what is the status of the DAC? Is the DAC a public institution, or is it basically a private institution? Because if it's a public institution like some of the commissions, then we have to abide by certain criteria that are set forth in the state governmental code and everything else. Whereas if it's pretty much if the DAC is a private institute, a private assembly, I think that basically we can do whatever we wish. And I guess I would kind of think that I would echo the sentiments of the two previous speakers, that it does seem as if we should be able to get by with just a simple majority. And if say somebody views things differently, I guess that they could maybe kind of somewhat like the Supreme Court. You can have the majority opinion, but also a minority opinion if somebody else has a thought on that. So that might be an option for us.
Okay, thank you. Josh, as I recall, we had this discussion before about the legal status of this, and it was decided that this committee is not considered equivalent to a city commission or city committee, and we weren't subject to the same rules and regulations that those institutions are. But please correct me if I am wrong on that point.
No, you are correct, and that in some ways was intentional on the part of how we set this up. We have run this by ATC's Dash's council to confirm this. So a couple of points. The committee is not appointed by elected officials, nor is it appointed by the board of directors. And as a result of that, it has become an advisory committee that is under essentially under the purview of staff. And so it is also not a committee which makes decisions about, service or policies and those kinds of things. So two sides to that. One, it could seem like the committee is got a little bit less oomph to it as compared to something like a board or a commission. On the flip side, the committee is not bound. You're not bound by public meeting laws. You're not bound by procedures, to your point, Jim, that are in the code of Virginia. Your meetings, we do, of course, record for you, and I think the committee has felt that it makes sense to be open, and I think that's a great thing to anyone who would like to join or speak, and that's really part of the intention. But ultimately, you are not as a non-governing body, you are not bound by those rules, and that gives you a lot of freedom to take up what matters you want to take up, to learn the things you want to learn, to make sure you're speaking about the things that you feel are important, representing the ridership.
Thank you, Josh, for that clarification. I realize we now have two Jims on the committee, so I have to be sure that I say the last name as well. So Jim Durham, you have things you wish to comment on?
Yes, and I'll try to keep it short. I agree with the concept of the committee adopting advocacy roles. And while we're not a formal board or commission and hence don't have those rules, I will point out that even the formal boards and commissions are typically asked to provide the city manager with a letter in the fall for the city manager's benefit of their budget priorities. And then they typically also provide one to council in the after the city manager's budget. So even the formal ones take positions on budget priorities. And so I think we're entirely consistent with that practice. I think majority vote's good, as we already have a quorum. The electronic voting provides some agility. There still would need to be some advance notice. And I don't, yeah, the 10 days is nice, but as the example we just experienced this spring may not be adequate. So I don't know what people think about a 5 or 7 day notice before a vote would be due electronically or a special meeting would be held. So those are my comments.
Thank you, Jim. Eric?
And I'm sorry. And to Yvette's question, I'm fine with the chair signing for the committee, and the letter can always say a majority of the board, or excuse me, of the committee, or the committee unanimously, and I think that can be addressed in the wording of the letter. I'm not opposed to us having our names if we forward it to, but I'd be interested what others think, but I don't think that's, I'm comfortable with the chair signing the letter once there's been a majority vote on an issue.
Thank you, Jim. Eric?
I agree with a lot of what Bonnie and Yvette said, and to kind of Jim's point, piggybacking off of Yvette's question, that was something that I feel strongly about, the wording of, Ross, if you do sign for it on behalf of the committee, that it is represented if there isn't a majority, to indicate that it's based on a majority instead of, saying it's every single person. I just think that that's personally a more ethical approach for from a personnel standpoint.
Okay, thank you, Eric. Matthew, you're new to this, but I don't know whether you have a viewpoint yet or not, but I'll let you express it.
This is a rough one. I think I'm going to listen a little bit more. I like voting. I think consensus and quorums are good, but I'll listen a little bit more to the debate. But thank you.
Okay, thank you. Abdel, do you have a particular view you wish to express at this point? You there, Abdel? I think we may have lost them for
He's
the
been
moment.
having some connection issues.
Okay. Murat, since you're still on the call as a former member of DAC and now a member of the board, do you want to offer any opinion?
No, stay quiet, but I kind of I want to comment on the process. This is a very healthy process, and I have to commend you for that, Ross, to facilitating this.
People have other views, because what I would suggest as maybe next steps based on this conversation is that we provide some draft new language to the guidelines dealing with advocacy. We'd run them past staff, obviously, first. And Josh, if you need to run it by your in-house lawyer, I mean, your counsel, it isn't in-house, I realize, to see whether there's an issue there. I think that's fine. And then I would bring it back to the committee at our first fall meeting for formal adoption. Abdel, I see your hand up, so let me call on you first. Abdel? We lost him again. What's the sense of the group about next steps then? In agreement on my proposal or not?
Sounds good.
Modified?
Sounds
I
good.
agree.
Sandy,
Sounds
you
good.
okay?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Have some-
I was just unmuting myself. Yeah, I agree. I think that would be and I promise to participate in the draft the next time. But yeah, I think that's a good one, and yeah, we'll work with that.
Okay. Anyone else? There probably is one other issue related to guidelines. If we're gonna start revising guidelines, that I probably think it's worth bringing up, which is the total number of members. Whitney and I have had a discussion about this in recent weeks, because we're getting again close to our maximum number, our upper limit of numbers with our new members, and yet we're still not entirely reflective of the community, either in terms of gender or in terms of racial composition, in terms of even service areas. And I would hope that the committee would agree with me that in terms of thinking about having a prosperous and equitable system moving forward with DASH, that we would like to have on our committee a true representation of the riders, which in our first year we have made progress on, but we're not at the ultimate goal yet. And thus, we might have to increase the number of members on the DAC in order to meet the goal of full representation. Comments?
This is Sandy again. Possibly I think you brought this up before, mentioned it before. Would there be a good success if we had some form of, I guess, appeal notice on the, we've got lots of advertising on the buses internally. I don't know how many people read some of those little notices up on the in the overhead, but I would think letting people know that there is a committee and that we're requesting people to be involved in it. Either that, or in addition to the number of emails that go out to various people. I don't know what the email list, I get a lot of things, but I got them before I got on the committee. If there's any way of recruiting through those two sources. There's probably better ones, but those are the ones that come to mind for me.
Thank you, Sandy. Whitney, do you want to speak to this issue a little bit yourself too, please?
Sure. Yes, I can tell you when we initially did the outreach for this committee, that is actually one of the methods that we use to let people know that we were looking for members. So we typically do our website itself, social media. We use the email list, Sandy, that you were just talking about. We also put posters on the buses. We reach out to a variety of the civic associations in the city. We also contact the city itself to let them know that we're looking. They have their own email listserv that they use to send out throughout the city. So we're actually going to be using them this go round to try and solicit some additional applications for membership. Trying to think if there's anything else I'm missing. We also reached out to, oh no, I mentioned the city. So yeah, a couple of different city commissions to see if there were any interest there. So we try to reach broadly to get interest in DAC, but getting the socioeconomical and racial balance that we're looking for has proven to be a little difficult.
Can Whitney or Ross, can you remind me, are we looking for a high school representative? Yeah.
Yes, we are. And in fact, Abdel indicated to me when we had our introductory call that he might have one or two candidates that might fit that bill. So I've sort of tasked him with that, and I'm waiting for an appropriate update. And I know Whitney has also tried through a variety of different avenues as well during the summer to do this. And it may be that we have to wait till school is back in session again in the fall before we nail it down. But we do feel strongly that the student population does represent an important ridership for the system, and we would like to see them represented if we can.
Yes, and Yvette, just to clarify a little bit, so I reached out to ACPS directly because we actually already had a relationship with them to see if they could identify anyone. Unfortunately, we didn't get the response that we were hoping for. So I've also reached out to someone within the city who works with a lot of the different youth recreation centers to see if there's anyone that we can find with interest through that route also.
Anybody else want to comment on this? I mean, I guess the question is, do you want to be flexible and increase the upper limit of membership, which at the moment stands at 14, if I remember correctly, Whitney?
9 is the minimum, 14 is the maximum.
Right. And right now we're sort of in between. But if we try to fill a student member and a couple of other people that fit the characteristics that Whitney and I have been talking about, we may well exceed the number of 14, which is why I just simply bring it up right now to see whether there's a sense, if we're going to rewrite the guidelines in the fall, whether we want to modify a bit the number, the upper limit number of the committee.
This is Jim Durham. I'd be comfortable with an upper limit of 16, increasing it by 2 to give us a little bit more buffer. And if we have that in the draft, we'll know better. We meet again, I believe, in October. If that's an appropriate number, but certainly for today's discussion, I'm very comfortable with increasing it by a couple.
Thank you. How do others feel?
This is Sandy again. In fact, there's going to be a lot of us who are going to expire our term here next spring. I would venture to say, you know, if we don't increase the limit, and even if we do increase the limit to say 15 or 16, a couple of numbers up, some of us might, you know, decide to get off the board early, you know, by 1 or 2 meetings to accommodate that. I'm not suggesting anybody should do that, but I'm just saying, if we're going to be off the board anyway, I keep saying board, off the committee anyway, well then maybe would be good to bail out one or 2 meetings early.
It is not my preference, Sandy, to have that happen for the sake of continuity. I understand the point you're making, however. And I might point out, you are eligible for reappointment. Having said that, I'm going to let others speak to this. Bonnie, do you have a particular opinion, or Yvette?
I think 16 is fine. I wouldn't make it any larger than that. I just think when new members are appointed, we need to be really mindful of what we're missing and what we need on the committee.
I feel pretty neutral about it. I think typically it works well when if we're having in-person meeting that everybody can sit in one table. That typically works pretty well. Additionally, I thought since we're talking about new members, it will be helpful to have a new committee member orientation if we can put together some docket for them to get accustomed.
And in fact, Whitney and Josh both have done a new member orientation through phone calls. And then Whitney and I did, or I did, and Whitney and a few calls. It was sort of, our schedules have done that, a welcoming and orientation as well, Yvette. So be assured we're at least on top of that issue. Eric, do you have a particular view here?
I'm a bit indifferent. I will say, like, hearing the caliber of members kind of at hand here, I think that's kind of helpful to further expand like the diversification of the group. Certainly a younger representatives, which I think is very important, just to be holistic in our approach. But I'm kind of like Yvette, a little bit neutral and indifferent on, keeping it where we currently are, or, increasing it by 2. I mean, I'd be fine either way.
In the interest of time, since we do have a number of other items we need to get to, let me suggest that we will give you a draft on composition of members, meaning the number, not the specifics, in the fall meeting, and we can have a final discussion and vote then amongst this group. So I thank you all for both the discussion on advocacy as well as this brief discussion on composition, so that we can move forward with staff to make the revisions necessary for our October meeing. Do you
need help in writing it, or are you turning this to staff, or what?
My inclination was to turn it to staff, Bonnie, but
well, that's fine.
But if
that's fine. I just wanted to make sure that there was a name or a category attached to who was.
Yes, I would. Whitney and Josh.
Okay.
Along with their counsel, I presume has to review it, would be charged with the drafting for our October meeting.
Okay, thank you.
And I thank both of them for volunteering for this task.
Yeah, we're happy to do that, and I'm supportive of these actions and the intention here, and we'll just let you know procedurally that I will look to the group to understand that the group supports this movement and get everything clean, and then we'll have it ready for you, and then you guys can thumbs up it in your next meeting. We will then update the cover page to show the last update and have the new content for you. I would also just mention, as you pointed out, Ross, that we hope that you all will serve multiple terms. It is a two-year term with 3 consecutive terms being allowable. So one could serve full 6 years. But I would just ask that you let Whitney know of your desire to continue to serve or not, so that she can then meet with me and we can make sure the composition is maintained of the group. And to your point, I think I support very much, and I think maybe there's an opportunity to somehow reflect this in the guidelines, that the diversity component of making sure we have representation of all of our riders, has always been important to me, to hear from our disadvantaged riders, to make sure that we're providing a service that meets their needs and is accessible to them. So that would be another component that I would just ask to make sure that is continued to be considered. But I'll let you go on with your meeting, Ross, and then I'm going to drop off unless there's.
All right. Thank you, Josh, very much for participating. Appreciate having you with us.
Of course. And thank you all for everything you're doing and for being here. We'll look forward to hosting you at the facility. And we are ready for hybrid meetings, and we can accommodate your group, your full group in person as needed.
Thanks so much, Josh.
Bye.
Okay, as Josh has nicely provided us an earlier segue to, he mentioned that City Council now recognizes the fact that of the existence of this DAC group, and actually wrote it in their regulation to create the Duke Street Transitway Committee, the Bus Rapid Transit Group, and that there would be a DAC member, and Yvette graciously agreed to serve as our member on this committee, and Jim Durham, representing a local association and also his other interest, has also been attending as well. So we've had backup in case Yvette could not make a meeting. So tonight I asked Yvette, and aided as she wishes by Jim, to give a brief update on where we are in this process and what, if any, input you'd like from the committee. So if I may turn it over to you, Yvette.
Thank you, Ross. So I'm very glad to serve on the Duke Street Transitway Advisory Group. Thank you, Ross, for the nomination. So far we have met 3 times. I'm happy to provide a little bit of a background. So what I included in the slides is posted on the Duke Street in Motion website, so everybody can just search Duke Street in Motion and easily access that information. So Duke Street in Motion is used interchangeably with Duke Street Transitway project. So the geographic area that it covers is the Duke Street corridor from the Landmark Mall all the way to King Street. So if you're familiar with Dash Bus 30, previously the 88 bus, that route is essentially what the Duke Street corridor is. So I personally live on South England Street near Duke Street, so I'm pretty intimately familiar with the area and the businesses and services that the corridor has to offer. So I'm glad to have this opportunity. So you likely have heard the launch of the Duke Street in Motion project last fall, because I understand that the city and Dash Bus has done very extensive outreach in parks, libraries, pop-up events, condo buildings, etc., to get people familiarized with the Duke Street in Motion concept. We've sent out online and feedback forms, gather community input through a written form as well to see how residents and people who live in the neighborhood are feeling about the bus rapid transit that's about to come. The community feedback is also on the website, which if you're interested, you could take a look at it. So about, I would say less than 2,000 responses have been gathered. It's a wide variety of responses. We have a breakdown of demographic. And a lot of the PR firm that the city has partnered with, I understand, has bilingual employee members that went to a lot of the places that will attract a diverse population with different needs, with different relationships with Duke Street. So if I could draw your attention to maybe the second slides. I know Whitney has put in the timeline. Yeah, so these three are the key dates that I would like to point out. So the reason why Duke Street corridor has been attracting this much attention originated from 2012. There was a feasibility study that was completed, approved by the city council, and the 2012 concept plan is still the foundation of our discussion today. So this is served as the baseline from which alternatives are being developed. And 10 years later, the advisory group was formed. It was there to caucus and look at the priorities as the community sees fit, listen to consultants who specialize in transit planning development to see the plans that they have outlined, they have shortlisted. And the result of the advisory group is to vote on a preferred option amongst one or more that will be presented. So the advisory group is an ad hoc committee formed and appointed by city manager. So there are 11 members that includes at-large representatives, dash representative, planning member, transportation committee, as well as business owners and land use attorney. So it represents a quite a wide array of populations. And anecdotally from the conversation that I've had with the committee members, it looks like we have a good mix of drivers, bikers, people who walk up and down Duke Street, people who may push trolleys on Duke Street, and so forth. So it represents a wide need as well. So there, in the bylaw of the advisory group, the city manager pointed out that we're going to meet 12 times in 12 months. It will likely be less than 12 meetings, but roughly every month or so. It's going to be at every third Thursday of the month. So if you're interested in joining, channeling in through Zoom, you can do that. The physical location of the meeting is the community room in the police station. So I encourage you to join if you want to. There is no meeting in July though. And the committee has, the advisory group has the option to be extended if warranted by the city manager for another year in the term. So what does the committee advisory group do? It just, as I alluded before, it to provide recommendation to the city council on a preferred alternative. And the dollar amount that we're talking about, I understand from the first meeting, is 87 million. So there are two grants that pertains to improving the Duke Street corridor. One of them is 75 million, one of them is 12 million. So altogether, we're talking about 87 million here. So in the meeting 1 and meeting 2, the advisory group has discussed and adopted a vision and guiding principles that features 6 keywords, which is convenient, efficient, equitable, safe, vibrant, and sustainable. You will find under each keywords, there is a breakdown of objectives and how to, in execution, in reality, make Duke Street in alignment with these keywords. It's also on this Duke Street in Motion website if you want to check it out. So meeting 3, which happened last week, is I believe so far the most important meeting. What we did is we looked at the 2012 proposed plan and how that's different from what we see right now. So if we could go to the next slide. So I would say the most important thing is to look at the little illustration on the right side. You will see an existing physical appearance of that typical section and the 2012 plan concept of that typical section. The Duke Street was broke down to 5 segments, I believe. The first one you see, segment number 1 is from Landmark Mall to Jordan Street. Jordan Street is where, Aldi, Harris Teeter, where that is. So the reason why it's divided to these segments are based on a typical physical appearance. In this case, there are 6 lanes, right, on each side. And then there's an island dividing both directions of traffic. And in the 2012 proposed plan, you will see a bus lane is added on both sides. A bike lane is between the bus lane and the vehicle lane. The island was still there. And then a bus station is turning, a bus stop is turning into a bus station. So the distinction here between a bus stop and bus station is that bus stop could be a pole, right, just with the signage. And bus station, you typically have seating, have shades, and all that. So this is just giving an example of what we're asked to, what feedback are we asked to provide as advisory group. So we look at it based on the 6 keywords that I highlighted earlier. Is it convenient, right? It might not be convenient. It might be convenient because bus is coming right at the lane, and so the bus has a dedicated lane. It might speed things up, so it may be convenient. Is it efficient? It could be. Is it equitable? Is it safe? Is it vibrant, and is it sustainable? So some might argue that the bike lane being in between bus lane and vehicle lane is not safe, right? Alternatively, we could have a bike lane between the bus lane and the sidewalk. That's an option. So this is just give you an example of the discussion that we had. So moving on to segment number 2. So segment 2A is from Jordan Street to Wheeler Avenue to North Gordon Street. North Gordon Street is where the Enterprise Rent-A-Car, the Temple Restaurant, so that section. And the typical physical appearance of that section is that there is service road on both sides. And on the south side, the service road is backing up to residential duplexes. On the north side, the service road is backing up to, it's a mix of condo buildings and small businesses. And the service road on the north side is wider, is wider, it's 20 feet. On the left side, it's 2 lane. And the actual road has 2 lane of traffic on each side. No island, no barrier in between. So in the 2012 plan, they proposed to eliminate the service road. It looks like expand the sidewalk, add a bus lane, keep the 2 lanes of traffic, and keep the service road on the north side. So that's what's in the 2012 plan. And if you go back, go to the next slide, you'll be able to see segment 2 to a subsection, North Gordon Street to Wheeler Avenue. Wheeler Avenue is where the police station, where the McDonald's is. So we don't, a typical section looks like there is no service road, but there is various buffer, 2 lanes on each side. 2012 plan is to add a bus lane and eliminate 1 lane eastbound. So segment, the next segment that we see, Wheeler Avenue to Ross Street. as you can see, typical section, two lanes. The general purpose lane is eastbound, and then there's 3 lanes westbound. 2012 plan is to add, buses on both sides. And as you might remember that earlier when we were talking about Landmark to Jordan Street, there were bus lanes, but you sort of just don't see it here anymore. Last segment we have is from Ross Street to King Street. The street has gotten wider again, so you will see an island. You will see 6 lanes of traffic, 3 on each side, and the bus lane has reappeared in this situation. So this is all the illustration that has really helped us understand what the different individual needs of segments are. So as a advisory group committee, we have we have verbally discussed how each segment can improve, how the 2012 plan is not attending to some specific needs and guiding principles and vision these days if we don't do any modifications. But I will take this opportunity to ask the DAC members, ask Dash Bus, and the neighbors, friends, riders that you know of to provide input in the 2012 plan. And in general, how can the Duke Street function better? That way I could be an ambassador and translate your needs and wants to the advisory group, to the consultants, to the city planners. So I'll pause here to see how we're doing.
Thank you, Yvette. Comments from DAC members to Yvette? Questions, comments?
This is Jim Milanska. I've got just a couple of ideas or thoughts on this proposal. I think the real problem for the Duke Street BRT is that the position of the service road goes back and forth on Duke Street. So have the consultants or the city come up with any ideas for how you transition between the sides? Because it seems like we generally have the right of way, but the streets, the service road jostles back and forth between the 2 locations from all the way from Quaker Lane all the way to Jordan, particularly. So I'm just kind of curious as to how if there are any thoughts in terms of how the BRT would be operated in between, say, Jordan and Quaker Lane, because that area is, I think, is going to be really tough, I think, to master.
Yeah, no, thank you, Jim, for pointing that out. So in terms of how the bus rapid transit will function, I believe it doesn't, we're not settling on any of these concrete plans right now. We're discussing the possibilities of what it can be. And as I understand that, even in the planning process, it doesn't have to be all the way from Landmark to Quaker Lane to be, what is it called, like a curbside bus, curbside business access transit BART lane. So it could be a combination of bus rapid transit in the middle of the lane where, at both sides of the barrier, except that it's 2 lanes of bus rapid transit, and pedestrians will need to access the crosswalk, go to the middle, take the bus. Alternatively, it will be the curbside option that it resembles how we take buses right now. So it could be either or, a combination of both during each segment, or consultants will have other alternatives. And some popular feedbacks I recall from the conversation that we had about service roads is that we need to prioritize service road in front of residential buildings. we need to expand the sidewalks on Service Road because they're a bit narrow and inconsistent. And the bus, if you remember Jordan Street and Duke Street, there's a 28A, it's in 29K, that actually has the bus stop at the Service Road instead of at the Duke Street where Dash bus is. So that's another a little bit dangerous intersection that consultants have flagged. Jim, do you remember any other comments that came up last time regarding Service Road?
You've done a good job overall. Thank you very much, Yvette. I would just add that now through Monday the 11th, the advisory group's been asked to say, what would you improve on using the 2012 as a baseline? What would you improve upon that? And that the next step is over the summer, the consultants and city staff will then develop actual alternatives. So for example, Jim, your comment about the service roads, the 2012 plan would have taken, as shown here, I believe, well, not segment 3, but in that segment 2, just east of Jordan, the 2012 concept was to remove the service road in front of the duplexes, about 14 residences, and retain the one on the north side, which is serving businesses. And the advisory committee said, no, if you're going to take, well, number one, we'd prefer to see bus rapid transit throughout the whole corridor, with a dedicated lane. But if you've got a concept that takes away a service road, we'd prefer to retain service roads in front of residents. So it's at that concept level, not the road width, through the corridor level of analysis that's been done to date. In the fall, mid to late September, the staff will do the work through 18 October to take those generalized inputs and develop actual alternatives, A, B, and C. The advisory group then on 18 August will give their feedback on those alternatives, says, yeah, that's about what we intended, or blah, blah, blah. And then in the middle of September, 3 final alternatives, if you will go out for public comment. And all that precedes, so that's gathering public input on alternative concepts. And then over the winter, staff will develop preferred alternatives. I don't think you'll see the level of detail that you're asking for sure until the actual alternative concepts, but maybe not until the preferred concept. Does that answer your question, Jim? And it's sort of explaining what level of detail we're at right now.
Yeah, I think that I understand where we're at. I guess I'm just worried about what kind of concepts they're going to develop in terms of adjusting or placing the bus rapid transit in the service roads or eliminating the service roads. I'm just kind of curious about that, because I think that will be very challenging.
Yeah, so the advisory committee asked for at least one alternative concept with a dedicated lane throughout. And the only way to achieve that is through eliminating service roads. So you will see a concept that eliminates service roads. Then there will be something less drastic in terms of the service roads that will probably involve a shared lane. So I think you'll see all the alternatives you would expect to see based on that excellent input from the advisory committee.
Thank you, Jim. Bonnie, you have your hand up.
Sure. I'm not able to see the graphic well, but it sounds like there's a part of Duke Street that would not have a dedicated bus lane. And that sounds like it would really slow the bus down a lot. But I think Jim maybe have answered my question in that those details haven't been worked out yet. I'd also like to just raise a red flag about having the bus lane, having to cross traffic to get to the bus lane to get on the bus. I think it would be much safer if people caught the bus by the curb as they do now. So that's all.
Thank you, Bonnie. I appreciate your comment about the curbside bus lane idea. To clarify, in the 2012 plan concepts, the bus rapid transit is continuous. So it's all the way from Landmark to King Street. And I believe that that's the consensus.
Okay, thank you.
Are there other people who wish to give feedback at this point to Yvette that are on this call, or other comments? Otherwise, Yvette, would you remind us again when comments are due?
Sure. For the specific feedback regarding the 2012 plan, I believe it's either next Monday or the Monday after. I can't really remember. I'm waiting for Chris's email, but you can email me anytime. This is an ongoing conversation. I would like to know how I could be the voice of you in representing DAC on the improvement of the corridor. And I would like to thank Jim for his participation in advisory group meetings in different capacities. His input has really propelled the conversation.
Well, my thanks to you both. I'm sure you will come back to us again with some updates as time goes on, but we're deeply appreciative of what you're doing on not only on behalf of the DAC, but frankly on behalf of the entire citizens of this city, and particularly those that are in the Duke Street corridor. So thank you. So with that, I'm going to just tell those of you who are new to this group that we usually have a service update from Martin Barna, our DASH's Director of Planning and Marketing, at every meeting. So he is a most welcome visitor, member of the family, so to speak, at these gatherings. So this evening, we asked him if he would come just bring us up to date on any of the issues that DASH is facing, the opportunities at this point, and then solicit any comments on the basis of that. So I will turn that over to Martin. And I might just add before Martin begins that there is the city is forcing a computer update to Whitney's computer as we speak, and therefore she's going to have to drop off. So Martin is going to sort of steer us through the kind of remaining part of this meeting. So Martin, I'll let you take it over. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Ross. And as long as you guys are inviting me, I will be happy to meet with you guys and share with you all the great stuff that's going on with Dash and get your feedback and on ways that we can do things better. So thank you again for having me. So I do have just a kind of a relatively brief update this evening. 4 items. The first is a update on our ridership. As I've shown in previous meetings, we are seeing historic ridership growth in the past year, due in large part to the free fares, the new network, as well as we think fuel prices and just the general COVID recovery of people slowly finding their way back to work and back to other activities that they might need to use buses to get to. So this graph it shows the last 4 fiscal years. The yellow line is the current fiscal year, which is just we don't yet have the June data that we can share, but you can see that we have a sharp trend upwards from last July to this most recent May. We just counted over about 350,000 boardings in May, which, as you can see, was for the first time eclipsed the pre-COVID ridership number for the month of May. So really a great sign of our continued recovery and the continued return to transit. We finally kind of reached that pre-COVID ridership level that we saw back in 2018, 2019. I would also note that as you can see from basically the start of the yellow line to the end of the line, we have essentially doubled our ridership, our monthly ridership from before the new network and free fares launched in September to May. So doubling our ridership, which is just totally unprecedented as far as we're aware, historic ridership growth. So really excited to see that and to share that information with you. The second update I had was just a follow-up on our FY23 transit development plan. You'll recall that I presented to this group back in April the draft version of our TDP as we were going through our public outreach process. I'm happy to report that we, as of last month, the board adopted our final TDP document, which goes into effect really now, July 1st, with the start of the new fiscal year. The final version that was adopted by the board was largely similar to what we had presented to you back in April. You'll recall there were some changes associated with the Potomac Yard Metro Station that is scheduled to open near the end of this year for lines 33, 34, and 36. So we will be implementing those when the Metro Station opens. As Josh mentioned, we were very fortunate through the City Council's add-delete budget process. We were able to secure some additional funding for the line 30 improvements. We had identified 5 unfunded improvements in our draft TDP, and our top priority. The first one was the one that they selected for funding, and I do want to echo Josh's appreciation for those on this call and a part of this group that were active and involved in advocating for that. So thank you very much for helping with that, and we're looking forward to implementing that in the next couple of months here. The third, the biggest difference between the TDP that we proposed and the final TDP was line 34 in Old Town. We had made a proposal. Here's the graphic for the Old Town or the Potomac Yard changes. We had made a proposal in Old Town for line 34 to have a couple different changes. One, it would no longer go to Braddock Road Metro as shown here as it does today, and instead would go up to Potomac Yard. And secondarily, it would be rerouted from its current alignment on North Fairfax Street, just north of City Hall. It would be moved over to North Pitt Street, which we felt provided some additional coverage, particularly to some areas along North Pitt Street with new development and density, commercial activities. Whereas North Fairfax Street, it wasn't getting much ridership on North Fairfax Street because there was already a lot of service with lines 30 and 31 along that segment, and the vast majority of the riders were using those routes instead of the 34. So we felt this was an opportunity to make this route more useful and better serve the Old Town and Old Town North community. So we went through the public outreach process, and there was a lot of negative public feedback from the North Pitt Street community about having buses on their street. Their main concerns were increasing traffic. There's a lot of parking supply issues there, so they felt that adding bus stops would restrict that, and other concerns about noise and the effect that this might have on their quiet residential character that they have in their community. So we received almost 100 comments from the public, so it was a very large number of comments. We had a number of speakers at our board meetings and public hearings, so it was a really a significant amount of feedback that we got. So in our working with the civic associations and the kind of the ad hoc group there, we developed some alternatives that we presented to our board. Ultimately, we went with a compromise, a semi-compromise shown here. Originally, we had proposed that the route go along North Pitt Street from basically King Street all the way up to Bashford. But after hearing a lot of concerns, especially from residents in this area of Pitt Street, we came up with this alternative that would have the route stay on North Fairfax Street, its current routing, and then jog over to Pitt Street via Pendleton, which is a street that had previously had bus service on until this past September. And then it would pick up Pitt Street and serve a lot of the new residential developments here. There's a couple grocery stores, a lot of commercial activity near Madison and Montgomery, and it would provide a really strong connection from those areas up to the Potomac Yard Metro. So we would be able to achieve the service to those areas while minimizing the impact on the more residential areas closer to King Street. So we felt that was a pretty good compromise. Didn't make everyone happy. There's still a significant number of people in the community that still aren't really pleased with this, but the board did decide to go ahead and approve the TDP with this modification, the Pendleton crossover, we called it. So we still have to get through the parking removal process through the city's traffic and parking board. We're anticipating that we go into that group in the next couple of weeks here. So stay tuned, but we're anticipating that we will be able to implement this when the Potomac Yard Metro opens, whenever that may be, hopefully in November or December of this year. So just wanted to provide that update on the TDP. already mentioned the line 30 improvements. Any questions on the TDP item before I move on?
Yeah, Martin, can I just ask that, I know when the groups came before you, both in comments and public hearings, they were engaging legal representation. Do you expect that there may be some legal action made by representatives in that area against this new alignment?
I haven't heard anything further on that. I think we're trying to do everything we can to reach out and engage with them outside of the typical hearings and meetings. I know some city staff has met with the kind of the chief advocates in the community outside of the typical process to try to kind of get a better understanding of their concerns and if there's anything we can do to kind of anything further we can do to address those. So we're really trying to do everything we can to make sure that type of thing doesn't happen. But I haven't, to answer your question, I haven't heard anything that they would be pursuing that.
Okay, thank you, Martin. Other comments on the TDP for Martin? Okay, do you want to move on?
Sure. Yep. So I've got last two items here. One, I just wanted to make the committee aware of an ongoing issue that I think has been reported previously, but just to kind of follow up and provide the latest information. Like many, really many companies, not even within outside the transit agency, you hear this about airlines, about the service industry. Dash, like all of those entities, is experiencing a major shortage of operators due to a number of different factors. A lot of them related to kind of the COVID fallout. And just a number of different factors that we're grappling with. So what that's leading to is that we, in our history, we pride ourselves in very, very rarely missing trips. We believe that that's the extremely difficult situation for everyone, and we want to avoid that. If we print a trip on a timetable, that's a commitment to the riding public, and we hate to see a missed trip. But what we've seen in the last couple of months is a sharp increase in the number of missed trips due to these staffing issues. We did have a reduced service for the first couple of months of this year, from January through I guess it was February. It's 2 months. We were able to rebound and get back to our full service. We're not quite back to the point where we need to reduce service like that again, but it is still very tenuous, and it's a day-to-day situation of whether we're going to be able to make all the trips. So we are looking at options that would kind of have minor reductions on a day-to-day basis on line 35, which runs every 10 minutes throughout the day. The reason that we are focusing on that route is because it does not have a printed timetable. It's based on headways. So throughout the course of the day, we just tell customers that we have buses coming every 10 minutes without a kind of exact schedule. So we might look at running that every 11 or 12 minutes and save ourselves a couple operators if it comes to that. So that's the kind of thing we're looking at. We're trying to avoid any sort of reduction to like a Saturday schedule. That would be a very we wouldn't want to do that. But I just want to let you guys know it's possible that could happen over the next couple of months. We have aggressively been working to address the problem through recruitment. We've offered things like signing bonuses. We've done very put ourselves out there at trade shows and in different environments and advertised in many places that we've never advertised before to see if we can get better candidates. We have seen some good signs in the last couple of weeks, especially that this might be turning around, but it takes a while to get an operator in the door and fully trained up, usually about 2 months or so. So we're anticipating that at least through September, maybe October, we could be in a situation where we have to miss a couple more trips than we would normally do. So just wanted to kind of shed some light on that for the group and see if there are any questions.
Martin, can you remind me which one is the line 35?
Sure. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. That's the one in the West End. It runs from Van Dorn all the way up to the Pentagon.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
Sure. Okay. Well, moving on to my last update, I just wanted to let you know that we are going to be putting out a customer survey at some point in the next couple of weeks here. As I highlighted at the beginning, we're seeing really a strong ridership growth, and it's great to see. What we don't know, at least not at a very detailed quantitative level, is the why people are riding Dash more. We have some obviously strong ideas, but we really want to get a stronger sense of what's leading to these ridership trends. Are there things that we could modify or do better? Are people's riding behavior changing as a result of the new network? Is it the same people riding more? Is it people that had not ridden Dash before that are now riding Dash because it's more useful for them? And who are they? What type of rider profile are we seeing in terms of demographics and things like that? So we're trying to get a better sense of this, and we're hoping that this survey will be a good tool for us to do that. We'll be providing this online in English and Spanish. We'll be performing a major outreach campaign to increase awareness of the survey and just try to get as many responses as we can to get a really good sample size. And then, of course, we'll be sharing the results probably in the fall once we have them. So I think just wanted to share that with this group. I suspect that Whitney and myself will be reaching out to you once we have this survey kind of closer to being ready to be put out, in the hopes that you might be able to help support us. Certainly, we hope that you'll fill it out, but then also to share it with others, through other channels that you might have to maximize the reach for who can fill the survey out and how many responses we can get. So I just wanted to share that. Happy to answer any questions on this or anything else.
Martin, one of the things that this is Jim Milanska.
Hey, Jim.
Hi, how you doing?
Good to see you.
Good to see you too. On the customer survey, one of the things that this gets back to that the question about the DAC and the composition of the DAC. Is there a way that the survey form will actually permit a survey recipient to actually indicate their name, address, or contact number if they would like a contact person? Because I think that a customer survey may be a really a very, very good way of identifying potential candidates for the DAC. So I'm not sure exactly what your survey is constructed of, but if there's a supplemental way to indicate, here's my address or something of that, or my contact, I think that might be a really good way of getting information for people that are, say, regular transit users, but maybe they speak Spanish, or the method of transit usage is very infrequent or during odd times. So as I said, I don't know if you've gotten the survey together yet, but I would encourage you to indicate something at the end of the question if you want to be further be part of the process of planning Dash and whatever. Please indicate your name and number, and maybe we can draft a couple of those people to be part of the DAC.
Yeah, thank you. That's a great idea. And I think we can definitely do that. We have not finalized the survey. What we usually do is have kind of a lot of questions about their travel habits, and then the second part of the survey is kind of a more optional part where we talk about all their demographics, since those questions are sometimes a little more sensitive. And then at the end, we reference at the beginning, but then at the end we have a place where they can enter their email address for a chance to win a gift card of some sort, and usually get a lot of email addresses that way. But we can also incorporate this box if you're interested in becoming more involved with Dash or something to that effect, where we could use that information. Because I agree, I mean, you've got kind of a perfect encapsulation of their how much they ride, where they're from, and their background, that would really allow you to kind of, for lack of a better term, handpick. Like if a certain part of the city is not represented, or a certain part of the community, you kind of could kind of center in on those. So I think that's a really good idea.
Okay, I'd encourage you to add that to your survey. I think that would really help you out a lot.
Thank you. Jim and then Marat.
Yeah, thank you very much, Martin, for the update. Appreciate it. A question on ridership came up during the Duke Street in Motion Advisory Committee meeting, the last one here last week. And the statement, it was really a statement made by one of the committee members that, well, you know, that 2012 plan or concept plan shouldn't be considered that valid because ridership today is so much less than it was in 2012. And obviously you're tracking the performance over the last few years. I have no reference to where we stand with respect to 2012. And if you don't have that answer today, if you could just maybe send that to us via Whitney or something after this meeting, it would be helpful to know if that was a true statement that we are dramatically below 2012 ridership. I know transit systems in general over the last decade have lost ridership, and it's great to see the recent trends, but I don't know where we stand with respect to a decade ago. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't have that offhand. I can take a look. I know that we did see kind of an increase in kind of the 2013, 2014 area in terms of overall ridership, but I can pull that up and I'll specifically look at the AT8 and kind of see how that compares to line 30. I think that's a good data point to have anyways. I can tell you,
thank you.
I can tell you that, you know, compared to, you know, pre-COVID, the AT8 versus line 30 is comparable. I think we're still a little bit below what the AT8 did before the pandemic. One thing to note, obviously, is that with the new network, we have a lot of additional service, specifically Metrobus service in the Duke Street corridor with the 29K and 29N now running every 20 minutes, and the 28A being shifted down to King Street, or sorry, shifted down to Duke Street between Fox Chase and King Street Metro running every 12 minutes. So there's a lot of additional buses running that are not Dash. So it's possible that it seems like, you know, some of the ridership may be kind of shifting over to Metrobus potentially there. But I'll pull up the numbers for that and I'll get that sent over to you.
Marat?
I just raised my hand. I don't want to be rude, but it's 2:15 a.m. So I think I'm gonna.
All right. Good night. Thank you for your participation.
Yeah, I just didn't want to just disappear, but I really appreciate the camaraderie, and this is a great group, and we'll see each other in many different activities.
Indeed.
And all that other stuff.
Thank
Good
you.
seeing you, Martin.
Feel better, Marat.
Thank you so much. Bye, everyone.
Okay, any other questions for Martin?
Martin,
Hearing none?
Can I ask?
Yvette, please, go ahead.
I'm just curious if we have these analysis that look at, you know, what's the operating expenses in total per line, and what's the ridership, the head count for that route, so we could see how one passenger, how much expenses one passenger can generate. And on the other hand, for $1 of money that we put into operating a line, how many riders do we, you know, generate? It doesn't make sense. I don't know if we have existing analysis like that.
Sorry about that. I was muted for a second. We don't have that. That's not something that we typically break down by a route level. And we do in the TDP. I think we did before we went fare free. So I can, you know, it's a little difficult because we have, you know, different, you know, buses. A bus will be on a number of different routes during the day, but we can kind of break it out just by service hours and kind of assigning an operating cost per hour to that. So that's something that we could come up with. So you basically cost per rider, kind of the cost to operate a route divided by the number of boardings on that route in a typical day. Is that kind of what you're after?
Yeah, I think that's one. I think that's one aspect. The other is look at how much in total we invest in each route, and then given the rider. So like in one passenger, how much does that generate, or one additional dollar, $1 in revenue, or one additional dollar in revenue, how much more passengers we generate? I don't know if it makes sense. I'm conceptualizing this in my head. I don't know if it makes sense for me to say it.
Well, so with our fare-free operations, we don't have revenue obviously from passengers. So I think you're talking about cost, right? Kind of operating costs. If we were basically, if we were for every extra dollar we invest in service on, say, line 33, are we getting, are we getting more ridership with that? Like what amount of ridership would we expect?
Yeah, that's where I'm going. Yes.
And we could, I think it might be a little more direct to do, not necessarily cost, but just service hours, which is kind of the basic measure of how much service you're providing on each route. And that's obviously directly, related to cost, because you're basically paying for the fuel and the labor rate per hour. So we have that ridership productivity per hour, per revenue hour, which would kind of get you as well. So I can provide some information on that by route as well.
That'd be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you for the question.
Great question. Thank you, Yvette. Any other questions for Martin? Hearing none. Thank you, Martin. As always, appreciate the update. We're going to move into our last segment of our meeting, which is our kind of open forum, which is something that we've been trying to institute in our last couple of meetings, which is really just an opportunity for the members of this group to comment about anything related to Dash, any concern, any praise, any criticisms that we could just have a discussion on. So I'd like to kind of have this as a discussion between the committee as opposed to just having talking heads and just comments. So it's really, this is the committee's time to discuss things. And then the other thing I just want to bring up, so it's not forgotten, that with Murat off, we do need to pick a new vice chair. I would suggest to Whitney that we do that election in the fall meeting so that there's time for people to either self-nominate or suggest candidates to Whitney between now and, let's say, the middle of September. And then those names would come forward for a vote at the October meeting. Is everyone agreeable to that notion?
Yeah.
Okay. Other issues people wish to bring up?
This is Jim at Plank again. I just wanted to bring up something that I've found. I'm also a member of the Transportation Commission, curiously enough. But one of the things that I do after I leave the Transportation Commission is I'll take a Dash Route 30 bus home, and the buses are oftentimes are leaving about 10 o'clock or so from King Street, so it's a pretty late bus. But for the last, I think, 3 times that I've taken a bus that late, there's actually been a standing load of people getting off onto the bus at King Street and being dispersed throughout onto Duke Street. So at least it's my observation that it seems that the Dash is doing a very good job, and actually I know there's a real problem with getting enough people to actually do it, but we might actually have to provide more service late at night because there are an awful lot of people that are using us, which is great.
Excellent. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you. I just wanted to, this is Matt Mcmanus, to comment. It would be great to learn from Dash how much money they're saving by going to electric buses with oil prices so high. I think that the economics of electric buses would be great to hear a little bit more about. I know they talked to the Transit Commission a bit on that, but I think, and any experiences that they've gained from introducing that into the fleet.
Good suggestion. Thank you. Maybe we can have a briefing on that at our October meeting, Whitney.
That'd be great.
I'm just taking some notes, and we can arrange to get some information on that.
Great.
For next
Thank you, Martin.
Oh,
Anyone else? Yvette, go ahead, please.
Did we mention anything about updating the website in previous meeting? I vaguely remember.
Yes, and I will let Whitney talk to the travail of that.
Yes, it's been a journey. We've had a few setbacks, unfortunately, with the launch, but we have just a few more items that we've sent over to them. So we're in good shape. I should be able to get that over to you very soon.
This is a vendor issue. Okay, let's be clear. This is not an issue of the Dash staff. So I want to make that clear. And those of you who have, like I have, had to put up a website for an organization know the complications of dealing with certain vendors and your requirements. Anyone else wish to offer any comment? Otherwise, I will take a motion to adjourn this meeting with thanks to everyone for participating, and also to offer to each of you, if you have ideas for our next couple of meetings in the fall, please either email me or Whitney, or both of us with those, and we will, the summer we'll use as listening to the committee on ways to improve what we're trying to do.
Thank you, Ross. Great initiative. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll move to adjourn the meeting.
Second?
I second it.
Thank you. Sandy seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Continue to have a healthy and happy summer, folks, and we'll see each other in October.
Thank you. Thank you, Ross.
Thank you.
Very much, guys.
Thanks, Ross.
Thank you.